For more than 100 years, we've all known the story of the Titanic. It's a tragedy about ice and maybe a little bit of arrogance. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the truth is actually darker, way stranger, and maybe even deliberate? We're going to dive a lot deeper, because the official story, it might just be the tip of the iceberg. Okay, picture this. There's a new ship, the largest one ever built, and everyone's calling it unsinkable. It's April, it's on its maiden voyage, and it's packed with some of the richest people on Earth. Then, bang, it hits an iceberg on the starboard side and sinks into the freezing North Atlantic. And the worst part? Not nearly enough lifeboats. Thousands die. You think I'm talking about the Titanic, right? Well, I'm not. Yeah, that whole story I just laid out for you, it's from a novel, a work of fiction. And that's where we're starting, with our first case file, a book that somehow seemed to predict the entire disaster with an accuracy that, well, it just doesn't seem possible. So get this, all the way back in 1898, that's a full 14 years before the Titanic even set sail, an author named Morgan Robertson writes this book called The Wreck of the Titan. And when you start looking at the details, the similarities get really, really unsettling. This is where it gets just wild. Just look at this. The names, Titan and Titanic. Come on, the length. The book's ship was 800 feet. The real one was 882. Super close. Top speed for both was around 25 knots. And the crash? Hitting an iceberg, on the starboard side, in April. It's the same story. They even both had the bare minimum number of lifeboats required by law. Which, wasn't nearly enough. The odds of all these coincidences lining up are just astronomical. Seriously, how does that happen? How could anyone accidentally guess the future with that much detail? I mean, was it just a 1 in a billion coincidence, or was something else going on? And that question is what takes us from a creepy prophecy to a cold, calculated crime. All right, let's open our next case file. Because this is where things get even crazier, with what might be the biggest conspiracy of them all. The idea that the ship resting at the bottom of the ocean isn't actually the Titanic. So here it is, the switch theory. The shipping company White Star Line had these two massive, nearly identical sister ships, the Olympic and the Titanic. The theory is that the older ship, the Olympic, got seriously damaged in an accident and wasn't insured for the repairs. So the owners cooked up this insane plan to pull off a massive insurance scam. And here's how they supposedly plan to pull it off. Step 1, you've got this damaged ship, the Olympic. That's just a huge money pit. Step 2, in the shipyard, you secretly swap it with its brand new, fully insured twin, the Titanic. You just repaint the names. Step 3, you send the damaged ship, now pretending to be the Titanic, out on its maiden voyage, knowing it's not fully seaworthy and hoping for a convenient accident. And step 4, you cash in on that huge insurance policy. It's an absolutely diabolical accusation. Okay, look, a claim that big is going to need some serious evidence, right? Well, the people who believe this theory point to a bunch of really suspicious clues. Things that just don't add up, that were happening before the ship even
Let's run
left
through
the
the
dock.
clues. First, there's physical evidence. The actual Titanic was built with 14 portholes on a certain deck. The Olympic had 16. Well, photos of the ship leaving on that final voyage appear to show 16 portholes. Then there's the ship's owner, the famous J.P. Morgan. He canceled his ticket literally hours before it left, saying he was sick. But then he was apparently seen looking perfectly healthy the next day. Oh, and he also had his entire collection of priceless bronze statues unloaded from the ship right before it sailed.
I mean, you have to ask, right? It's the multi-million-dollar question. Why would the owner of the ship, along with his most valuable stuff, suddenly bail on the most hyped maiden voyage in history? It's just strange. Did he know that ship was never supposed to make it to New York? All right, so if a prophetic book and a massive insurance fraud scheme aren't enough for you, there's one more theory. This one is a little more supernatural. This is the story of a curse that might have doomed the ship before it ever touched water. So, as the story goes, locked away somewhere in the cargo hold was this incredibly cursed object, the mummy case of an ancient Egyptian priestess. In this thing, the unlucky mummy supposedly had a long, bloody history of bringing nothing but misery and death to anyone who owned it. And the people who believe in the curse, they point to a few key things. Apparently, some survivors later said there was just this feeling of dread hanging over the whole trip. But the biggest thing, they claimed the mummy's dark energy influenced Captain Smith. I mean, this was a veteran captain with decades of experience, and suddenly he's acting recklessly, pushing the ship way too fast and ignoring at least 6 different warnings about ice fields right in his
Freezing
path.
water. So you've got
This was the temperature of the water that night, -2 degrees Celsius. That's actually below freezing. For the human body, that level of cold is pretty much instantly lethal.
So how long could you survive in that? On average, 15 minutes. That was it. That's all the time you had before hypothermia would shut your body down. Just 15
So you've got
minutes.
prophecies, fraud, curses.
But whatever you believe, the end result was exactly the same. The reality of what actually happened in those final hours is a horror story all on its own, one written in ice and freezing water.
And that's
This
the thing
was
that's so brutal to think about. For the 1,500 people who went into that water in the pitch black of the Atlantic, with the band having played its final song, the end was fast. Most of them didn't drown. The freezing cold got them first.
And so we're left with this historical wreckage. Was the sinking of the Titanic just a horrible, tragic accident? A story of an iceberg and bad luck? Or was it the last chapter in a much bigger story? One woven from a weird prophecy, a giant financial fraud, and an ancient curse. The secrets, it seems, are still down there in the deep.